Thank you very much for being here this morning. I'm here with Chris Bunny, who's the Deputy Chief Executive of Disability Support Services, or DSS, and we are here at the Disability Connect Expo. We've made some important announcements this morning around changes to DSS that we have taken some time to ensure we get right. Over the last 12 months, we've been putting the foundations in place to ensure that disabled people have a system that they can rely on, that is consistent, fair and transparent and sustainable. And what we have announced today is that from February next year, new users for DSS will have a consistent assessment and allocation tool through the 14 NASCs. That will remove the regional variation that has been in place for many years across the country, and is one of the things that we significantly heard from the disability community, that they wanted consistency and transparency. The other significant change is that from April next year, those who currently have flexible funding through Disability Support Services and a NASC will have a budget. This is an interim measure. The budget will be based on what they have spent over the 2 years prior, and they will have choice and control over how they use that budget. So the significant piece today is not just the changes from March 24, but the purchasing guidelines will be removed entirely. And for the over 1,800 disabled people that participated in the DSS consultation, that was the message we got loud and clear. They want choice and control. They want to make the decisions about the supports and services they need in their lives. They'll have a personal plan, and the personal plan will be what guides that flexible funding. There will of course be some oversight and assurance, and that will vary depending on whether they're new to flexible funding, the size of the support they require, and how they've used flexible funding in the past. So it's been a massive amount of work to get to this point. I'm really confident now that we have the foundations in place, and the significant part of stabilising DSS is now complete. And while we're moving to and rolling this new system out, the reassessments will start taking place from October next year, but it's really exciting to be in a strong position that we are today.
It's been a bit of a train wreck since your predecessor announced this in 2024. How far does the announcement today go in rectifying what happened?
Yeah, well, the first thing was the changes were necessary because we had a massive escalation of costs, and the spending was getting out of control. So steps were necessary to get that spending under control. And then you'll remember from the independent review, part of it was then, okay, why are we seeing such a massive escalation in spending? What's contributing to it? And there are a series of recommendations. These are the final recommendations that we are putting in place. And one of them, you'll remember, was around residential care. And so doing the work on residential care, which is a significant part of the spending, was a significant shift. A single residential pricing model that not only works for disabled people and their families and carers, it's much easier for the NASCs and who allocate the funding and need to now operate within a budget. So March 24, NASCs didn't have budgets. That was another reason the spending got out of control. And it's also easier for the residential care providers. So there's been a series of changes that now mean we are confident that the spending will be managed going forward. It's sustainable. And the importance of the single assessment and allocation tool means that disabled people can be confident that how they are being assessed and funding allocated is going to be uniform and transparent across the country if they are being supported by a NASC.
Those purchasing guidelines, are they gone from today or from
So predominantly from the 1st of April next year. So 1st of February, new people coming into the system, but that will be a small number. So from the 1st of April next year, 90% of flexible funding users are in a NASC. So on the 1st of April next year, the purchasing guidelines in its entirety will be gone.
Did you intend for the purchasing guidelines to be a temporary measure when you first introduced them?
So the purchasing guidelines have been around for quite some time. March 24, there were changes to them.
Sorry, they were revised.
Yeah, so it was a necessary step to get the spending under control. Honestly, it was escalating at such a rate that it was just completely not sustainable. And that's why, and I accept, it's been an incredibly challenging time, but we had to get the spending under control. That's why those measures were put in place at the time, while we could do this work to understand what was happening and, more importantly, understand what we needed to do to put the foundations in place to ensure that we had spending under control.
So why wasn't spending under control? Were people taking the mickey? Why was it skyrocketing?
Well, there's a number of reasons. If you think about NASCs not having budgets, they'd previously had budgets, the budgets had been removed. During COVID, the guidelines around flexible funding had been relaxed, but then post-COVID, they hadn't been tightened up again. And with residential pricing, there was a massive variation. Let's say, for example, you might have had a residential provider with, say, 40 residents, 30 of them on individual priced contracts, which was incredibly complex, completely not transparent, and confusing for everybody involved. So Chris and the team spent a lot of work, did a lot of time with the NASCs and the budgets, with the residential pricing model to ensure that we got that right. And in addition to that, one of the other recommendations in the independent review was to put a performance management process in place for the NASCs to help them manage within their budgets. Have I missed anything?
No, I think the last 12 months has all been about stabilising the system, because we want a system that people can rely on. You can't rely on a system that keeps on throwing up surprises. So we're trying to take the surprise, put predictability into it, and then we can be a lot more assuring to the community that it's there for them and they can rely on it, and it's not going to change year by year. We're building something that will endure.
EGLs aren't part of today's announcement. Why is that?
Yeah, so 90% of flexible funding users are through a NASC. EGL operates differently, and what we wanted to do was first and foremost work with the largest group of flexible funding users. Chris and the team are working with the EGL regional teams and sites at the moment to work out how the changes can be incorporated for them. So that's just the next step of work. It started, but we're just not sure how that change will best work for them.
When can they expect there are some sort of announcement on those changes?
So we started conversations with the regional leadership groups for the EGL sites, and it really is how that just advances or progresses in the next few months. The hope is, and the intent is, that we will have a common system across the country, so we don't have the variability depending on where you live.
The assessments, how often do they take place? So they know how much?
Yeah, so the reassessments will start from the 1st of October, and we expect it'll take 2 to 3 years for everybody to go through that reassessment process. We expect after that there'll be an annual reassessment process. But I would say, and a question that was asked of me this morning is, just as there is today, if there is an urgent need, if there's a change in a disabled person's circumstances, they'll continue to go to their NASC for a reassessment to work through what that change means. So that system doesn't change, and I'd really encourage any disabled person or their family members that are concerned to contact their NASC about those changed circumstances.
We're seeing thousands more disabled people seeking services and support every single year, and their needs are becoming increasingly complex. Like, how confident are you in the sustainability of this, keeping in mind the fact that services are actually getting more expensive?
Yeah, so that's been a big part of the work that we've been doing to build really solid foundations, and also to ensure that we've got better information about the people that are accessing services so that we can predict and forecast what that spending looks like. So I'll remind you that in Budget 24 we secured an additional $1.1 billion, Budget 25 another $1 billion. So it's not a funding issue, it's a system issue. That's why fixing the system and putting the foundations in place is really important, because it means we've got solid information about what will be needed in the future.
I also note in your release you said that if somebody uses up their budget, they're not going to get anything else. I mean, does that mean that they have to wait until the next time it gets reviewed?
Yeah. So one of the parts with giving disabled people and their families a budget with complete freedom and choice and control over that budget is also then trusting them to manage that budget. So there's a responsibility that goes with that freedom to spend their budget according to their plan and their choices.
Can you also just give an idea of the sort of range of the budget, like how much are we talking?
I'll pass that over to Chris.
Yeah, so the budgets range enormously. They run from low thousands right through to six-figure budgets that some people receive at the moment. Just to come to just maybe expand on the Minister's point on when the money runs out, then what? We want people to succeed. So the point that flexible funding, that choice and control does come with responsibility, but we want to set up support almost in a coaching type way to help people kind of navigate that and be successful, because the last thing we want is for people to run out of money early and have to wait for the next kind of replenishment. The other thing that we want to just make sure that people are aware of, there is no compulsion to use flexible funding. If people would prefer to have organised services on their behalf, that is still on offer. So that's quite important. So yeah, we really want this to succeed for the person being supported and to do it their way, but still wrap around support so that they can be successful.
Is this what the sector wanted, the flexible funding? Is that what
Absolutely.
they asked for?
Absolutely. So literally from the day I became the Minister, it was clear to me that some of what we have announced today around consistency, around transparency, but most importantly choice and control, was what the disability sector wanted. And there's been a significant consultation with over 1,800 people in the formal 4-month period, and that's exactly what we've listened to and heard and delivered today.
Minister, I've just got a couple of questions on the Safer Communities Fund. Why has the government's fund come from?
So initially the fund that was where the policies were set in DPMC was for a 2-year period, and the Department of Internal Affairs was the administrator of that fund. That's why it's kind of come to an end.
You made $1 million available in last year's budget. Why hasn't the same amount of money been made available this year?
Well, those are decisions obviously that are made in terms of DPMC considering whether or not there was a requirement for further funding. It was decided it wasn't. In terms of any organisations that do want assistance, there's still a range of financial products that are available or areas that they can seek funding through, as many NGOs do.
What would you say to people from places of worship like mosques, synagogues, that have benefited from this fund post-March 15?
Yeah, so obviously post-March 15 there was a heightened need and an awareness of the challenges that were faced. It was set up as a temporary fund to support that very kind of initial need, and it was extended a couple of times, but that has come to a conclusion now.
Our terrorist level group though is still a realistic possibility, so does that not mean there's still some need?
Yeah, so in that particular community, there was a significant amount of work at the time over an extended period of time to provide that assistance. That's not for a moment saying that there won't be concerns that exist across New Zealand in a range of areas, and that's why there is support available through the existing channels.
Just back to this announcement today, have you rebuilt trust with the sector? Because it was pretty much smashed, wasn't it, in 2024?
Yeah, and I accept, and I've acknowledged today and on many occasions how incredibly challenging those changes were. Unfortunately, they were necessary, and I believe the disability community inherently understand that we need to have a system that is sustainable and that's reliable. And we've taken our time because I want to ensure that although there is a period of transition and change with these announcements, that they can have confidence that there is a system that is built for the future, that is consistent, fair, transparent and sustainable. And that's what we've delivered today. That will take time. That will absolutely take time, and I accept that. I accept that there will be comments and concerns still from people within the disability community, but I want them to be confident that we are committed to the principles of enabling good lives, and we are committed and have delivered with this announcement choice and control, which was their number one ask.
You were parachuted into fix all of this. Do you think you've succeeded?
There will always be more work to do, but what I wanted to do first and foremost was stabilise the system, and I think that's what we have achieved with the DSS team and the task force, and then we get to move forward into a strengthening phase. And many of the conversations I've had with disabled people in their whānau can see where we want to go, and are realistic about the fact it will take time. What I've been unwilling to do is to make promises that I didn't believe as a government we would be able to keep. And that's why we've taken time. And today I think is a really important step forward, but there's still definitely more work to do.
How is the community received today's changes so far? I know it's still early days, but what have you heard so far?
Well, the response that I've had from the first stakeholder briefing has been really positive. And they're really encouraged, and particularly in the families and carers being considered formally for the first time in part of the assessment is a really significant shift, and I know that makes an enormous difference to families and carers, and that is, I think, a significant part of today's announcement. You know, disabled people don't live in a vacuum. You know, they have a support structure of families and carers. And for some, that is a far more intense relationship and support structure than others. And so this announcement today recognises how important they are, and so for their needs are then built into that assessment and allocation. And so the initial feedback has been really positive. I think it's fair to say there are a few people surprised that the purchasing guidelines will be removed in their entirety.
Would you say that the government made a mistake by excluding carers and family?
Look, I think, well, that's been something in place for many, many years. And if you talk to any disabled person, they would say that the system's been broken for a very long time. And so the changes that we have announced today are a significant improvement over conditions that have been in place for years. And I can also see that's part of rebuilding trust and confidence with the community, is they can see that we have taken on board not just the shorter term issues and responded to the recommendations in the review. We've gone beyond that. We have heard them, we have listened, and we have delivered.
What lessons has the government taken away from this whole process?
Well, I'm not sure I would say there's a lesson. I've acknowledged the whole time it's been incredibly challenging. And, you know, if that had not been necessary, that would have been great. But unfortunately, when you have a budget that's out of control, spending that's out of control, and if you breach the Public Finance Act, you're breaking the law, right? So we had a responsibility and had to act with urgency.
So you stand by your approach?
Yeah, those are the decisions that were required and necessary at the time. And what we have done over this period of time is now not only put important foundations in place that resolve the issues that we addressed with the independent review, we've gone further than that and addressed some of the longer standing issues around consistency across the country, for example, with the assessment and allocation tool.
So you stand by what Minister said?
Absolutely. It was necessary. It was unfortunate. It was challenging. It created an incredible amount of stress. I accept that. But we have a responsibility to taxpayers to ensure that we understand what is happening with the spending where it is going and to get it under control.
What about
And
how it was done? Do you stand by how it was done?
look, you know, we could spend a lot of time going backwards over what if, how, when. That did occur, and it occurred because we had to get the spending under control, and that's exactly what we've done. As I said, I am not for a moment saying that it didn't cause significant stress, significant challenges for disabled people and their families.
She lost her job because of the way that she handled it.
Look, it was a challenging time. It was a very big challenge that as a government we had to address, and I've been working with my ministerial colleagues to ensure that we put the system in a place where the foundations are strong and we have a more sustainable system going forward. When you have to have that level of change, it's incredibly difficult. So would I have liked to have been able to change in a different way? Of course, but you deal with the circumstances you have. The circumstances we had was uncontrolled spending that was rapidly escalating, and we had to get our hands around it quickly. That's the work that she started and I picked up.
You acknowledge, though, that the optics of it looked mean-spirited at the time.
I accept that it was incredibly challenging for disabled people. I've said that on multiple occasions, and I'm very acutely aware of how challenging that was for disabled people and their families. It would have been nice if that was not necessary, but the reality was, first and foremost, we have a responsibility to get taxpayer spending under control. And that is what motivates me and drives me. It was an incredibly difficult time for everyone. That's why I think today is really important, because it is a significant step forward, not just around flexible funding and the purchasing guidelines, but the allocation and assessment tool that now will be consistent across the country, the inclusion of family and carers, and that's a significant change to the system, which I think will, really make an enormous difference over time.
Could we have avoided a lot of the stress if the disabled community was consulted on even stabilising?
Well, the challenge was it was urgent. And as soon as I became the minister, I was heavily involved with meeting disabled people, organisations, NGOs, family members, carers. So in parallel with the independent review, I was hearing all of the challenges. So I was acutely aware of what some of the challenges were. Some of them were new challenges. Some of them were challenges that have been around for decades. And so it was the balance of navigating those first challenges to stabilise the system. And there's amazing opportunities ahead of us when we do the next stage, which is to strengthen DSS. And I'm really, really excited about what we can do together. And the really concentrated consultation that DSS have done over that 4-month period to get to today, I think they can be incredibly confident that we've reflected from the day I started through to today what it is that they have been asking for.
Minister, a question about boarding houses. Auckland Council is struggling to crack down on illegal boarding houses. Some landlords are refusing entry, but they say that they are filled with MSD and Department of Corrections clients, beneficiaries basically. Is MSD knowingly sending people to illegal boarding houses?
I don't have the detail of that, and my colleague Tama Pōtaka is responsible for that space, but let me ask some questions and see what I can find out for you.
These are people who go to MSD and ask for housing and ask for housing allowances and that sort of thing, and are sent to boarding houses. What's your concern?
Yeah, so look, there will be many, many people across New Zealand who are housed in situations that are less than ideal. And I think if that's the first option available, then it's better than other options. And I know in particular, having been a former Minister of Corrections, how challenging it is to house former prisoners. But what I do know is any form of housing that provides them a base, even if far from ideal, the two things they need, which is what most of us need, somewhere to live and the ability to earn an income. and those are really important foundations.
Would you like to see boarding houses regulated?
I'm not aware of any work that's underway in that area, and it's not part of my responsibility. But what I do say is absolutely we want to see more warm, dry houses for more New Zealanders.
And some beneficiaries say they'd rather sleep on the streets than boarding house. Does that concern you?
I haven't heard that. What I have heard in the past from constituents is their massive concern about being in emergency housing in motels, and they have chosen to be in a car because they felt safer than in a motel. And nobody wants anyone to be living in a car, and that's why we've had a significant drive to reduce the number of people, particularly children, living in motels. Thanks very much.